everyone, I hope you're doing well. My name's Katie and I make book-related videos every single Wednesday, and one of my favorite parts of BookTube is finding underrated books that other people recommend and then also finding some ones for myself that I recommend to you guys. So for today's video, I'm going to be talking about a mix of books that I really love that I think you guys probably haven't heard of, and it's going to be a mix of adult, some young adult, and I also looked through like the backlog of my Goodreads to see what books have I really loved that I used to talk about a lot, say 5 years ago, and that way if you guys have maybe just subscribed in the past couple years, maybe you haven't heard me talk about these before. And of course, if you have any books that you really love that you don't hear hyped up or talked about normally on BookTube, but make sure to put them down below. The first book I wanted to talk about is Garnet Hill, and this is a trilogy, and this is a very gritty, dark crime series. Our protagonist is Maureen. She's living in Scotland. She's Scottish. She's an alcoholic, and her therapist boyfriend is murdered, and she becomes a prime suspect. So because she's a suspect, she tries to figure out what actually happened. I know it might sound a little bit like Girl on the Train, where like, oh, she's drunk, she doesn't remember what happened. But one, this came out before Girl on the Train, and two, this is about 5 times better than Girl on the Train. So highly, highly recommend that one. The next book is probably my favorite young adult book of all time, and I keep it very near and dear, very close to my heart, and that is Companions of the Night. This is a very short, quick, standalone novel where a young teenage girl, I don't remember if it's a little brother or sister, one of them forgets their teddy bear at the laundromat. So she thinks it's a great idea, middle of the night, to go back and get the teddy bear for them because they won't fall asleep without it. So she happens to go into the laundromat and stumble on to some unsavory characters. There's a group of people who have kidnapped this young man because they're convinced that he's a vampire, so they're torturing him, they're planning on killing him. And so she naturally doesn't believe he's a vampire, so attempts to break him free, and then the story kind of follows the aftermath of that. But this book, I used to just lie awake at night just thinking about constantly, and I wish the author wrote more books like this. I wish she wrote some adult fiction, but please let me know if you've read this because I don't think I've heard of another single person who has. And again, it's just a very strange standalone, and I feel like young adult these days is very different, not necessarily in a bad or a good way, but this is some good like old-fashioned young adult. The next book is Retribution by Gillian Hoffman, and I want to say first, trigger warnings for torture and rape for this book because this isn't a spoiler to say that's how this book starts off. That's just the beginning of the book, so just a warning. But a young woman named CJ has just recently passed the bar, so she's celebrating, or she's about to take the bar, one of the two. She's about to become a lawyer when a man breaks into her apartment and brutally attacks her. Then it flashes forward much farther into the future. She's a successful lawyer, and she has a suspect who kind of reminds her a little bit of him. So she's trying to figure out, is this the person who attacked me or not? And if it is, how can I kill him or get him in jail, etc. So it's a really interesting premise, and the author of this book, I looked into it, and her background is in the legal field. So it's not like season 2 of Broadchurch. I'm not gonna spoil Broadchurch if any of you watch that. I'm just starting to watch it now, and I can't even get through season 2 because I'm only 2 episodes in, and I feel like it's a dumbed down version of season 1. The stuff that happens in the courtroom is insane. It would never happen anywhere. It doesn't make any sense. So please let me know. As a side note, if you've watched Broadchurch, should I just have stopped at season 1? Should I keep going? Because right now, not a big fan of season 2. The next book I want to talk about is another young adult novel, and that is called 7 Tears into the Sea, and it's about a teenage girl. She goes to stay, I want to say it's at her grandmother's house in the Northwest. And first off, I just love any setting that takes place in the Northwest with the trees and that kind of nature. I absolutely love it. But this deals with a lot of a certain kind of folklore, and I'm not going to say which kind because I don't want to spoil it. You know, we have constant fairies and vampires, at least say 5 years ago we did in the young adult genre, and this is definitely not either of those. It's a lot stranger and more unique, and this book is very beautiful, very sad, and it's a standalone that I think if you're just in the mood to curl up when it's raining outside and very gloomy, highly recommend this one. The next book I want to talk about is some historical fiction, and I pretty rarely talk about historical fiction, but that is Sarah's Key. And I know this is actually a very popular book, but I don't think I've ever seen anyone on BookTube talk about it, and so that's why I wanted to bring it to your attention. But this has to do with World War II, and it's from 2 different points of view. First, we have Sarah. The book is Sarah's Key. She's 10 years old, living in France. She hides her brother away in this little secret, not passageway, I don't know how to describe it, kind of like a cupboard in the wall, thinking that she'll be back, but then her family is taken away so she can't return. So she's wondering what happened. Was her little brother able to get out or not? And then the other point of view is present day. A journalist is trying to research what happened. So naturally, with World War II being the setting of this book, it is very difficult to read, but I do highly, highly recommend it. And the next one I want to talk about is not a book, and that is a Japanese manga, and that is Vampire Princess Miyu. I remember being, I want to say, 10, and my brother and I were in a comic book shop, and I stumbled across just one of the little singles of just one chapter, and it was not the beginning. I don't know why. I was just really drawn in by the artwork, so I went into it not having any concept of what was going on, and I was just devastated because that one chapter was very dark and very devastating. But Miyu is half human and half, I want to say, demon, and she's born a vampire and is hunting down these creatures. If you like to read manga, want a really strong, interesting female protagonist, definitely check out Vampire Princess Miyu. And finally, this is a bit of a more recent read for me, and that's Berlin Syndrome. And if you want a really well-written, slower paced psychological thriller, I highly recommend this one. It's about a woman who, she's a backpacker, she's from Australia, and she's in Berlin, meets a guy, sleeps with him, goes back to his place, and he does not let her leave. And I emphasize that this is slow paced because a lot of people like thrillers because they like the idea of being thrilled and having their heart race and everything like that. And this is not that kind of book. It's incredibly slow paced, very psychological, and her dealing with Stockholm Syndrome. So if you're interested in that, I think you're really gonna enjoy it. But again, if you're looking for a stereotypical thriller, this is definitely not it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know, have you read any of these, and what are some underrated books that you never feel get enough love on BookTube? I hope you guys are doing well, and I'll see you guys next Wednesday.